Okay, I'm back with everything set up for starting on the base. My little hill, I added a little bit more, not completely dry, but that's not going to matter. It will continue to dry. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to glue the bottom of the house, and I'm just using tacky glue. You can use PVA, or you can even use hot glue. It depends on your glue gun, though. You don't want to use a high temp glue gun because it will melt the styrofoam, and then that's not going to hold your piece in place. So let's go ahead and just put some glue. And I go generous. I mean, it's not going to matter if it squishes out. By the time everything is on the base, you're not going to see any squishing or pretty much anything, because everything I do in the beginning is going to be covered up. But just in case there's a nick or something that's knocked off or whatever, there will be that base coat. Yes. And I'm going for basically brown, an earth tone. So I just mix up browns so that I'm not using one single bottle of paint. I'm trying to use these up. They're getting a little bit on the old side, so I'm trying to use these up. I've probably had these for a year or close. Like I said, it's just a base coat. And it is a lot of paint because this plaster does suck up the paint some. And I got me a big old cheap brush that I put this on with. And it's basically a dirt color that I'm gonna put on there. So here we go. This will go all over everything where there's going to be grass, rocks, everything. This is just a base. See, this is what I was saying, why it doesn't really matter that your Sculptamold coat is not super flat or smooth, because your paint shows all of that texture, but it doesn't look like a mess. Right now it kind of looks like a mess, but the further we get along, you'll see what I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth to get the effect that you're going for. Okay, I'm going to move to a smaller brush to get up close to the house. Now, if this were going to be a playable piece of terrain, I would have sloped the edges but since it's going to be just a diorama, I didn't feel like the edges needed to be sloped. That's why I decided to just go ahead and paint the edges with the earth tone. Because when I take photos for Ian, it will blend in a whole lot better with the background, rather than a stark white border around the edge of it. Okay, I think we've pretty much got everything covered. I'm probably going to do a second coat on this front part right here because I can see some gray through that, and if my overcoating that I do ever gets knocked off, or you know, something happens to it, then I don't want that to be gray. Alright, so let that dry down a little bit and come back and start the fun stuff. I decided at the last minute that I wanted to put like a little rock outcropping in the yard, and so real quickly I just made up 3. These are what they look like when they come out of the mold, and I've just used the Woodland Scenics rock mold. You just paint on a little bit of water, and that gets rid of any bubbles that would happen. And like literally in less than this one's still a little bit damp, but these 2 smaller ones, less than an hour for them to harden up to where I could paint them. I just put a little powders, paint, and then a little bit of dry brush over that to make it look like a rock. And I think I'm going to put it about right here. Maybe, I don't know, closer to the edge. And then I'll just stick that on with a little tacky glue. It doesn't take a whole lot because it's not a big thing that is going to be pulled off if something happens. Yeah, I think I want it right there. Alright, so next step, to make it look like an actual ground, we are going to paint on, let me get my little cup here, paint on some cement. You can use this from Woodland Scenics, or you can use watered down PVA. I use both. I just have this, so this is what I'm using. And you're just going to paint this all over everything. You want to kind of work a little bit fast because it will dry down pretty quick. And this is going over everything that I painted brown, except the edges. And this is why I said don't worry so much about what the gap between the house and the base. You'll see here in just a second. Why that doesn't really matter. So now that we've got our glue painted all over everything, this is my secret weapon. This is tile grout, and you just pick whatever color is best for you, whatever color you want to use. I use a like a sandstone color because it does darken a little bit. I've got it in, I put a, this is from spray paint, just a cap, and then a pair of nylon over top of that. And then you stretch it really tight and then just start shaking. And you're going to make a mess. That's what a vacuum is for. Isn't that what a vacuum is for? Cleaning up your crafting projects. And everywhere that you didn't get the glue, you're not going to have this tile grout. And once this stuff hardens, it is like a rock. Well, it's tile grout, so most of you know how hard tile grout is. So then I'll take a little extra. If I can find my little scooper, well, I can use this. And I put around the edge of the house to blend that in. And then take a paintbrush and smooth everything where I don't want it to be in areas. Sweep the floor basically. All of this will be vacuumed off, but then you just smooth that out a little bit. Places that you need to get up in there where you couldn't get it with your shaker. Need to add a little more? Add a little more. And I'm going to add a little more right here around this rock because I forgot about it. Normally I would have put this rock in when I did my Sculpt-A-Mold, but I just decided at the last minute that I was going to add this. And you just work it around until it looks like it's made into, like it's coming out of the ground. And give it a little shake just to level everything out. And then this is just alcohol. I prefer not using my 99% alcohol, but that's what I have in the bottle. So this just breaks the surface tension so that you can come along with your spray bottle if you don't have something already on your terrain. But if you have things that are already down, a dropper works great. And you just want to soak it all good. So there's a spot that I didn't get with the alcohol, and it ran right off. You want to make sure you've got everything covered with glue, because what you don't have covered with glue will come off. That's the good thing about us painting a base coat of brown. If it does come off, we've got that undercoat that's not going to show up white. Alright, we'll let that dry, and it will be hard as a rock. And I'll clean up the excess dust around here and clean off everything, and I'll be back. Well, I'm back, Um, I've been sitting here talking to my camera and nobody was there. So yeah, my dummy self forgot to turn on the record. Anyway, we're going to add some grass using my homemade static grass applicator. There are a ton of videos out there how to make these, so I'm not going to go into all of that, but for me, cost effective was yeah, definitely the way to go. And I think it works just as good as any store-bought static grass applicator. So we're going to add some grass, make this look a little bit more homey. I've already added a little bit. And then I want pretty much the whole thing covered in grass, but I do tend to like leave a little bit of dirt spots wherever there's going to be trees. I tend to not put much grass there. And I'm just buttoning this right up against the grass that I've already laid down. Usually I will do a lot bigger spot, but I was just going right along and happened to notice that my camera, the little light wasn't showing that I was recording. So had to stop. I'm using static tack from Woodland Scenics. There we go. And it works great. You can also use Elmer's glue, aka PVA. I don't want to use names like that. I guess we should say school glue. And you get you an area painted on. Definitely move your brush out of the way. I learned that lesson the hard way. I have a mix here of 2 mil, 4 mil, and 6 mil static grass in different varying degrees of color. Some is summer foliage, I think. Some is spring, and some is fall. I just like the mix that you have from different colors of grass, because that's how nature is. I'm going to stick my little pin in there. Like I said with the yesterday, yeah, it was yesterday for me. I don't know when it is for you, but like I said before, once this tile grout dries, it is hard as a rock, so it's hard to get through there. And we just start adding our green grass. And you want to be careful not to touch your pen. I've done that before and it scared me to death. So I will move my pen. I always like to do a 2-coat coverage. Just because I think it looks thicker and like a more lush. And it really doesn't take a whole lot of grass, so it's definitely worth it to put some paper, newspaper, or something underneath so that you can save your grass, because it's not super cheap, not super expensive either, so it's definitely worth it to do it on your dioramas. Let's see if we can get a close-up. Looks like little grass. Okay, I'm going to keep going, and I will just speed through the rest of the video, and so that way you guys aren't watching me do this over and over and over. As far as the path that comes out of the house, I do want to leave that because I'm going to add a different media right here where the path is, so I don't want grass. I don't know if you can see that. Works pretty good, I think. Now I know you can see that white from the glue, but this glue dries clear, and that's why we've done our tile grout underneath, because it gives it that dirt appearance underneath the grass. Okay, I'm going to take a little pause. I've got to add a little bit of this to a spray bottle and show you what I'll do next. Okay, so what I've done now, I've taken the Scenic cement and put it into a little spray bottle. Watered it down just a little bit more because this is a finer spray. I don't like to use the big spray bottles because they tend to like really put a lot of glue down where I don't want a lot of glue. I'm going to straight 12 mil grass, and that just gives a fuller lawn, and I'm going to go over what I've already put down. So I'll just add a little spray, trying to avoid the house obviously because we don't want grass on the house. So I spray pretty close. Load up my static grass applicator, DIY'd. Press the button and then just add those long 12 mil pieces. And that gives a lot fuller lawn look other than just this, where it kind of looks like AstroTurf a little bit. It just looks a lot better, I think. Fuller. And that's what we want, is a nice full yard. I don't do so much around the house because that's where people would be walking. Got nice coverage. Everything that you see that's white will dry clear, and then the little areas that I left that looks like just bare earth look like bare earth. So I'm pretty happy with that. Alright, so now we've got our little path that we've got to work on. And what I have found to be the easiest is I just go out in my backyard, because I live in the country, and I pick up all kinds of leaves and little pieces of twigs and stuff like that. And then I put it in an old coffee bean grinder, and it gives me varying degrees of, I guess, just media to work with. But I love the color of this for doing like paths and walkways. Sometimes I'll use sand, but just depending on the terrain. But I like this darker for a better contrast with what I'm doing with this diorama. So we will go to work on that. And I just use a smallish paintbrush, depending on what what area I'm working on. You know, if I have a large area, I'm not going to use a tiny little paintbrush, but this I want to get pretty close to the edge of this grass, because just like with the tile grout, I'll put it down with a base of glue, but then I go over it also with glue. And I just sprinkle all along where I want my path. And I try to stick to just the fine stuff for a path. Sometimes I'll go a little bit heavier on the edges. If you have any larger pieces, you can just move them to the sides. It's all about what you want it to look like. Spray it with little whoops. That's why I don't like these big sprayers. You get too close and you get to do it again. You know, it can be like Bob Ross and call it a happy little accident. Now let's try this again. There we go. All right. Now when that dries, it'll lighten up a little bit. Next step, we've got to figure out where we want to put some foliage, because we can't just leave a bare yard there. So let's put our house back together. We're looking pretty good. So let's see what we got in our stack of stuff. I want to add a couple trees, but not like huge overpowering trees. And I found that for just small-ish trees, Woodland Scenic Fine Leaf Foliage is great. If you want to make big trees, then you can add these to a larger tree stand. But see, when we look at scale, this just one piece out of this is as tall as our chimney. So I think that's going to be about what I want. So let's get out a couple of these. Maybe a couple of small ones. Kind of like that one. See, they really look like trees. But I like to use them for just like little bushes also. Or, you know, like say I didn't like how part of this tree looks. I can glue on little extra pieces to fill it out in areas that I want it to have longer branches. They're super simple to work with. I mean, you can literally stick them there and then get in there with your super glue and build it out however you like it. Okay, I'm going to take a little break while this dries. I don't want to be messing around. I do know I want a tree about there. And then I'll just go around, and everywhere that I want to put a tree, I mark my spot, because I'm going to do other things under the tree rather than have grass that comes straight up to the tree trunk. That doesn't happen in real life. So yeah, I'm going to let this dry and we're going to pause. Yeah, I'll be back. Okay, so before we put anything tall up here where we can't get down into this area, we want to do all of our low-lying and any details we want to do to the house before we put trees in the way and then can't get into it. So I'm going to work on the house first. What I like to do, add a little moss, just because I would think that moss would be growing on these wood shingles and a little on the what is this called again? Thatched roof. Boy, can't think today. So what I do to make my moss, I use fine turf and either static tack or Scenic cement. Either one works fine. You're just going to mix a little in a cup. You can use regular glue, regular PVA. It doesn't really matter as long as it dries clear. I'm going to go with the static tack because it's thicker and will dry down a little faster. Just about that much. If you need to add more, then you can add more. If you need to do less, you better add some more weeds. You just want to make a paste. I think I want a little more. So here's what I've got. And then wherever you want moss, lightly, just add it with your little stick or whatever applicator you want to use. I tend to do it like on the edges. It's not going to be hanging off. It can be kind of tricky to work with. Get a stick. Stick will probably work better. You'll find what works best for you. It looks like a lot right now, but once it dries down, it's not. It's really a whole lot less than what you think. You want to stick to areas that would tend to hold water. Kind of fiddly, but you just gotta keep working with it. The moss does not grow on every side of the house, so you don't want to go crazy with the moss. Pick your, what is it, the north side? Moss grows on north side of trees and that kind of stuff. So pick one side of the house and that'll be your mossy side. It does not want to stick. I know it looks like a lot, but it's really not. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I know right now it looks a little bit crazy, but once it dries down, you'll see that there's really not as much as what it looks like. Okay, after we've placed our moss, actually I've got a little bit left. I think I'm just going to put a little bit right here, just because I have it. Maybe some on the edge of this rock. You can't see that, can you? Okay, let's put a little bit of bushes and whatnot. We use our static tack. I've got some Scenic, Woodland Scenics underbrush. I've got my fine turf, and then I've got some coarse turf just for color variation. It makes it look a little more realistic. And then I've got some foliage fiber cluster. This is not Woodland Scenics. This is Hobby Lobby. So let's just start. And this is, you basically just tear off however much you want. I don't want that much. This stuff is great for making trees too. Let's work on the back, I think. And you just kind of ball it a little bit. Ball it up. Add you some glue on there. And then stick it where you want it. Kind of fluff that out a little bit. It doesn't really take a whole lot of glue. That's what you call on-the-fly landscaping. Okay, so now we take a little bit of our underbrush and add just a little around for different color variations. This is a little more chunky than the fine turf, but it makes for good underbrush. Just different color variations in your bushes that you've just planted. And once you have that on there, you take your watered down PVA or your Scenic cement, give it a little spray, break that surface tension, and coat it all with the glue. And now is when I will come in with my fine turf and add just a little sprinkles to blend it all together. You don't want to get your glue on any rocks that you have put on, because sometimes, even though it dries clear, it won't dry all the way matte. You'll have like a satin surface on your rocks, and you don't want that. I think we will add a few flowers. Decide where I want to put those. And I think I'm going to go with yellow. I don't like to use the whole, I don't know what this is what they would be called, the whole bouquet of flowers. I take an X-Acto knife and cut them in half usually. Sometimes I even just like take off single flowers of stems of flowers. Get some glue out here. Placing a few flowers off by themselves just because I like that little pop of color. You can place the whole spray of flowers if you want. I like doing this just because I like, I guess, the tediousness of it. This is the fun part for me. This is the details. I think of, you know, my yard in the summertime. I'll get those little yellow flowers all over everything. Well, we're going to put these on this bush. You got to take into consideration where your trees are going, because flowers don't usually grow in the shade very well, and your trees will make shade. So you got to remember that. Okay, everything has dried. And see, here's the moss, and you can tell that from what I put on there, that's nothing compared to what it looked like. So you have to take into consideration that it's going to dry down and not be as domineering as you think it is. So you may have to do 2 coats until you get the hang of what you want it to look like. I've marked out where I want my little trees, and then I changed my mind at the last minute. I tend to do that a lot, and I went ahead and built a big tree. I just went out in my backyard and found a little piece of a branch and broke it off, and then I used the fine leaf foliage. I just glued them all over my stick, and it looks like a tree. And then I did take the clump foliage and some Noch leaves, or Noch. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Let me get those and I will show you these. I really wish I had a couple colors of these, but I'm going for a kind of summery, late summer look with this. So I wanted things to be kind of green. So I didn't put a whole lot on. I just wanted to make that, I don't know, I wanted to make the impression that it was a tree that was still green, but getting past its prime, I guess, a little bit. So I'm good with how everything looks here. So the only thing we have left to do is I'm going to install the door last, because since this is a diorama, I don't need a working door. I'm going to glue this door in. But first, I'm going to glue my trees in, because I'm going to glue the door, I think, to the top of the house. That's one of those things that I'll figure it out when I get to it. That's a minute detail. Alright, so let's start with the little one. And I want to just take, maybe not start with the little one. This one I added a few of those Noch leaves, and I know the color is really not coming across. I'm going to just add a little bit of glue to the bottom of it. And then stick him in there. Make sure I have the side facing out that I want to face out. And then we'll do this with the larger one. Turn him how we want him. Okay, and here is our big tree. This is just a stick out of my backyard that I have glued all over it, these fine leaf foliage, and then sprayed it with spray glue and added some Noch leaves and clump foliage. And then we're going to put him all the way back here in the back. And I did go a little bit overboard with the tree. I mean, he's massive, but I think you kind of need something like that. Go ahead and put our glue in the hole. And there we go. I intentionally left some twigs bare because if you look in nature, there are a lot of just sticks, basically, branches coming out of the trees that are leafless. So I did that. So now what we're going to do, this looks like a manicured lawn. We're not going to do that. You've got to go for realistic, how trees are in nature. They drop leaves. What I use for dropped leaves? Basil. It is the best thing for making leaves that have fallen off the tree. And I just, mind you, this is not basil out of my cabinet. This is basil specifically for this purpose. And you just sprinkle them around. And it looks like leaves that have fallen off the tree. With that, I'm going to spray a little alcohol. Add some glue. All right. And with that, I'm calling it done. I like how it came out. Everything is how I liked it. I'm going to lower the camera down and I'll be right back. And here it is. lot of fun doing this. I always have fun making dioramas, and especially when I have models that are like what Ian puts out. They're like super easy to print. That means you don't have to mess with supports and cleaning up all that mess, and just, yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I hope he's happy with it. Once again, it is Ian Lovecraft. His current Kickstarter, A Tale of Two Cities. Say current, it's just about to come out. And this is just one of many, many, many amazing models. He also has the miniatures. They're all miniatures, but the warriors, the fighters, the everything, animals, creatures, you name it. If it's a campaign, he's going to do the whole set for it. And yeah, so check out his fundraiser. I will put a link in the description below. And like I said before, if you like this, please like and subscribe and possibly share. That would be great. And I appreciate you watching. You guys stay awesome. Have a great day, night, morning, evening, whatever time of day it is where you're at.